Welcome back to That Fitness Couple podcast, where we talk about how to stay fit by lifting weights and eating meat. Well, would you like to know what we're talking about today?
I do, actually.
Today we are going to talk about discipline.
It's one of your favorite topics.
I absolutely love this topic. And a lot of this was coming out of an event that we were at last week that you spoke at, which I know we'll have to do a podcast just about that. Your talk was amazing.
Thanks.
You're welcome. But after the event, what was very interesting is one of the attendees actually came up to me, which I was quite shocked about because you were grabbing all the attention. But this one attendee who actually knew who we were came up to me and she said, I need to ask, how is it that you guys are so disciplined? And my answer to her was, I actually don't view it as discipline. I think it's more about habits. When people see you doing hard things, or at least things that they perceive as hard, as long as you make a habit out of doing those hard things, they perceive you as disciplined.
It's really true. It's funny, I would always describe you as disciplined, me, because I live in my head and my mind and my body. Maybe, but hearing someone else's perception of you, I think, is always pretty interesting. Let's dive a little bit deeper into that. I love to hear your take on discipline.
Well, I think the way that you start with this is first recognizing that discipline is not a superpower. And I don't think people are born with discipline. I think that we are more inclined to be lazy, to take the easy route. But as I said before, when you see somebody doing something that you perceive as hard, like people might look at the way that we do nutrition, like, wow, you're so disciplined. And I don't think it's discipline. I think it's practice. I think that at the end of the day, when you practice doing a habit long enough and that habit then becomes habitual, that's what exhibits discipline. When people first decide that they're going to do a diet, the only thing that they're focused on is the outcome. I want to lose X amount of pounds. And we were in that spot also. When we were competing, it was being, if you want to call it discipline, about tracking the macros, making sure that we were getting our workouts in and doing all these things. But just like everybody else who did bodybuilding, what happened when those shows were over?
You let it all go and you eat 2 tubs of ice cream in bed next to each other and watch your belly inflate. That's what we did.
So is there actually discipline? I mean, you could say that we were disciplined for a period of time, but it didn't last. So how much discipline did we really have?
Well, I think it's interesting, and you can look at discipline in different ways. I think discipline can be seasonal, like I need to get ready for this show, this wedding, this vacation, whatever it is. I think true discipline, though, is actually a state of identity. It's actually who you are. When I think about I'm going to go in the kitchen and make food, I'm not looking for the easiest thing. I'm looking for what's going to make me feel best because my identity is this is what I eat to feel good. I think that discipline starts with habits, right? And maybe those habits are driven by a goal, but I think it ultimately becomes part of your identity.
Well, I would totally agree with that. At a certain point, you absorb it into just who you are, the things that you do on a daily basis. But if I could just back up for a second, I want to go back to that bodybuilding example because I would say that today we are probably more disciplined with our nutrition than we were back then. Yes.
What do you mean? What do you mean? When I was going into our kitchen and sneaking chocolate chips during bodybuilding prep because I had a sugar craving. Yeah. I mean, it's much easier, so to speak, now. And yes, someone would say you guys are more strict now or you're more disciplined now, but it's because we practiced it long enough. This is just who we are. I'm not going and sneaking chocolate chips.
Well, it was also the intention. So when you go to that bodybuilding example, and many people do this, the intention was, let me get myself into this certain shape for this certain day, and then whatever happens after that happens.
Yeah.
Whereas when we went down the route of saying, we're no longer going to do that bodybuilding thing, but we would love to be able to maintain that condition or near that condition.
I had a lot of pair of jeans I needed to stay fitting into.
Well, and I'm glad you have. That being said, it was the mindset shifted. It wasn't about the outcome at the end. It was, let's try these different nutritional practices and let's see where it goes. And as we continued to have the next iteration of our nutrition, we got better at it. And as we got better, the appearance to other people was, wow, they're so consistent, they're so disciplined with their nutrition. But I think it was just that we had so much practice and tried so many things until we got it right, or at least got it right for us, that now it's second nature. To me, I don't view myself when it comes to nutrition as discipline. In fact, we were away this past weekend and I was asked, like, do you ever eat any carbohydrates? Do you ever eat any of this stuff? And my answer was no, but it's not that I'm trying to will myself to do that. It just comes second nature at this point because I've had so much practice at it for the past, 5 or 6 years.
Where we were, there was a waffle cabin. I'm not going to eat a waffle in the middle of my day. I'm just not going to do it. It's not what I normally do. And some people may view that as discipline.
But I just feel like it's more, going back to your identity example, it's in more alignment with how I want to feel. It's more alignment with what my preferences are at this point. At another time, I may have said, sure, I'll have that, or sure, I'll try that. But I didn't have the practice that I have now. And it wouldn't be, a matter of trying to force myself to do these things. Like I said, it just comes more or less second nature. And I think that everybody has had this experience or currently has this experience in some facet of their life. All of us, hopefully all of us, are disciplined in brushing our teeth, right?
That's all I'm thinking about, yes.
Yeah, we get up in the morning, we do it, and we don't think about having to be disciplined in order to do that.
Maybe when you were a kid, you hated it. I mean, our kids moan and groan every time we're like, okay, go brush your teeth. They're like, oh my gosh. So at what point does that transition happen? And I guess that's the question I have for you, not about brushing your teeth, because I know you do that at least twice a day on your own without being told. What was something that you were not, quote unquote, disciplined with that you are now? And let's look at that journey to get there, because I think someone like success leaves clues. Someone listening is going to be able to say like, okay, I really wanted to do whatever with my fitness, my nutrition, my faith. How do I get over to the other side? So my question to you is, what is something that you are currently disciplined with you formerly were not?
I would say it is getting up first thing in the morning and reading my Bible. And I'll just take it a step further. You could take the Bible out of the situation for a moment. I was never a big reader. In fact, I never even read a book from cover to cover until I was 22 years old. 22, that's when I picked up the book The Fountainhead from Ayn Rand. And that book, it was a 700-page book, and I read it in a week.
Your parents are probably like, WTF. We spent 20 years trying to get this kid to read.
But what came from that, though, was I recognized the value of reading, and I learned a lot, not just in that book, but in other books that followed. So I got myself into the habit of reading and reading every single day. Now, it doesn't always start with full immersion, 700-page book in 1 week, because there's been periods of time where I haven't found books that I had a great interest in, but I found that there was value in those books. But just being in the habit of getting into it every single day, whether it be 5 minutes or a full hour. And that's a practice that I've maintained over many years. And so whether it's the Bible first thing in the morning, which for me more or less makes it very easy, because I can get up, I know that I'm going to put in anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. That's it. But I did that reading for the day. And if I get to do it in the evening also, oftentimes I will go to bed a little bit early, or if I know there's still some time before I actually have to fall asleep, I will pick up another book and spend that time reading.
So I want to go back to the question. You were not only not a reader, but you were definitely not a Bible reader.
Definitely not.
Definitely not in college and beyond. But now you get up, every single morning. I come down, the mornings that I do come down before you leave, and I see you, and you're either praying or you're reading your Bible. So walk us through how you got to that point.
Practice. I think that for me, it was being given permission, right? And I'm going to say this one just about the Bible, right? Being given permission that you don't have to read a full book. You can just read a passage. And that counts. And it was like, okay, I can start with that. I can do that. And I think that when we have small beginnings, sometimes I think it serves us so much more than when we do go the full immersion route. Now, you and I have had a lot of training on this, right? There's so much value to going full immersion on certain things, just jump right in. But I do believe that in terms of building habits, small beginnings sometimes fare a lot better. I mean, sure, full immersion, you might learn something really fast, but do you maintain that learning? Do you keep up with it over time? And I think that that's the difference, is the person who is disciplined is the person who maintains that particular habit over years. It's not just, I learned this once and now I move on to the next thing. It's, no, I continue to do this. So I think just that small beginning of knowing, hey, reading a passage, quote, counts.
What motivated you, though, I think, to start doing that?
I mean, I think it was just where we were at in our faith journey, where number one, I was open to it and I was open to learning. And I think the same thing applies whether we're talking about exercise or nutrition. Like, you have to be open to wanting to learn this new skill, this new habit. And as long as there's an openness there and you're not just looking at, well, what's this carrot right in front of me that I want to get a hold of, right? I think that's the big difference.
No, I would agree with you. It's funny. I just saw a meme video, and it was literally a tortoise in a path, and then it was a hare in a path. There was all these people around, and they had to get from the starting line to the finish line. And basically the author of the video, I'll find it. We could link it here. But they put on it like discipline on the tortoise, and it's so crazy. They set the tortoise down, and it just was like step, step, step. And then on the hare, the rabbit, they put motivation. And the rabbit like jumped around in a circle a little bit, looked over the wall at the tortoise, laid down, and the people are like cheering it, like, come on, come on. And there's that tortoise just like step, step, step. And of course, we've all heard the fable of the tortoise and the hare, right? The tortoise takes a nap. The hare takes a nap. The tortoise just keeps on moving. But the words discipline and motivation, I think, were really profound, because a lot of people think you have to be motivated in order to be disciplined. But what we're saying is motivation is not a factor, right? There could be a motivating factor. For me, changing my diet had a lot to do with getting up on a bodybuilding stage and not being embarrassed that I had cottage cheese legs or like a pudgy belly or whatever. Like, there was a motivation that was there. But it was simply just the habit each day, way back when, of tracking my meals, getting my workout in, track my meals, and it got to a point where I think exercising that practice of those habits, it leads us to a point where either we feel better or we feel worse. We're either better in life or we're not. And I think when we can see positive change, also known as success, right? That's positive change in any direction. We decide that we want to continue to practice it and employ it. And that for me is how the nutrition thing started. It's if I relied solely on motivation, well, I'm going to eat good on the day I feel motivated. I'm going to eat like trash on the day I don't. My monthly cycle is going to come. I'm going to eat ice cream. It's this constant wave. But I think in the beginning, motivation can drive us initially, but eventually it's not about motivation at all. Like, I'm not motivated to eat healthy, but I'm going to go eat burgers and eggs or whatever for lunch,
I think you bring up a certain awareness that is really important for people to grasp. And that is, the motivation may get you started. Right? Motivation will get you started, but it's ultimately not what's going to lead to discipline. And this is so common in weight loss journeys, because we see this all the time with people. It's a hard conversation, or it's at least a hard concept for a lot of people to grasp, that you're motivated right now to lose these 20 pounds, right? But the question is, are you going to maintain that same motivation to keep it off? And most people don't. Yeah. The motivation is there initially, or they have the motivation to lose the 20 pounds, but 3 weeks in, when they realize that there's a lot of boring, consistent habits that need to be implemented, that suddenly that motivation is no longer there. And that's when we, quote, backslide, but it's not really backsliding because you were never in the right place to begin with.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. I think relying on motivation is a surefire way to fail because, especially, it's total generalization, but women, we tend to be really driven by our emotions, and sometimes you feel like it and sometimes you don't. And if that's literally what the foundation is, it's like a sand foundation. Like, it will always fail. Whatever you're trying to build is going to crumble. That solid foundation comes from, yes, having a goal, but just saying, like, regardless of how I feel or what's going on or who of my children vomited today, like, I'm still going to do the thing because it's important to me for whatever reason it is. And understanding that you do that long enough and you arrive at a place where you no longer have to rely on the motivation. It's that identity shift. I think it's different for everyone. I think it probably also varies from task to task or from circumstance to circumstance. But you practice the habits long enough, it eventually just becomes you. And I think that that's a beautiful thing for us to embrace.
Well, on that note, with regards to practice, I think what we also need to convey is this idea that when you practice something, when you're practicing a sports skill, let's say when you were young, when you were practicing the piano, did you have screw-ups?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Okay. Well, when I tried to learn how to first throw a lacrosse ball, when I participated in a lot of different sports, there were many skills that had to have been learned, along with every other teammate that I was with. And we practiced. And in that practice, we got things wrong. But it was okay because it was practice, And I think that when we take that concept and we then apply it to some of these fitness-related or health-related changes that we're trying to make, I hope people don't beat themselves up when they get it wrong. When their goal is to make this significant change, but they recognize that I have to get good at this skill, this new way of eating, this new way of getting up in the morning and exercising, that there are going to be days where you get it wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's okay, because this is nothing more than practice. And when you learn how to get over those humps, when you learn how to correct those mistakes, then the chances of this becoming a long-standing habit, of you being viewed as that person who's so disciplined because they're doing the thing that everyone else views as being hard, you do it consistently, it's only because you put in the practice, and in putting in that practice, you made mistakes, but the thing is that you clearly corrected those mistakes along the way.